Hey everybody, it's Ruby with Valhalla Organics, and we're going to do a quick little video today about getting your seeds started for your victory garden. So the most important thing that you're going to want to do before you get started with any of this is to look up your USDA hardiness zone, and that will tell you a lot about the kinds of plants that you can successfully grow in your area and what kinds of timeline you're looking at in terms of when to start your seedlings. So today we're going to be starting kind of a broad variety of victory garden stuff. We've got a couple squash, so that's zucchini and yellow crookneck squash, and then 3 kinds of pickling cucumbers, because you guys know that's what we do. So we've got a lot of cucumbers to start. We've got a couple of sweet peppers. We're also going to do some hot peppers, but not in this tray. So a couple of different sweet peppers, and then everything else there is lettuce. So what I did to start out with is I just prepped this little seedling tray, and I bought a seedling starter, and that's a special kind of sterile potting soil. Little tiny seeds and little tiny seedlings are very delicate, and so it's best if you can start them in a seed starter mix. But if you don't have that, it is okay. You're just going to want to really keep track of any mold that might develop or any kinds of fungus that might develop, because that can hurt your little baby seedlings. So we'll see how well I can do this with one hand, but basically what I've done is prepped little signs for each of the kinds of crops, and the ones that don't have the signs, those are all going to be lettuce. They're just all going to be different kinds of lettuce, and for our garden I don't really care which kind of lettuce it is. They're all going to get planted in the same area in the bed, and so that's how that'll go. So we're going to start with the Boston pickling cucumber. So every seed packet is going to tell you how deep to plant the seeds and how far apart you want the plants to eventually be. So obviously when you're planting in a 6-pack like this, it doesn't really matter how far apart they'll eventually be, but it does matter because you want to know how many to plant. You're going to anticipate probably some of the seedlings aren't going to germinate, and some of them aren't going to successfully turn into a plant. They'll die at some point along the way. So I usually plant about twice as much as what I want to end up with. And the great thing is if you end up with a few extra plants, you can kind of figure out a spot to put them in and give them to a neighbor, all that kind of good stuff. All right, so we're going to start with the Boston pickling cucumber. I've got 6 little seeds because I've got 6 little places that I'm going to put them. So it's really pretty simple. I'm going to stick them in the soil there. So I've got my cucumbers in there, and I'm just going to gently cover them over with soil. So you don't need anything special for this. If you don't have these kind of seedling trays, you could use like an egg carton. You could use Dixie cups or Solo cups. You could use empty yogurt containers. Anything you can poke a hole in the bottom of and put a tray underneath, you can pretty much start seedlings in there. So next one we're going to do is the red bell pepper. So these are kind of smaller little seeds, and this is slightly awkward because I'm trying to do it with one hand. So usually a smaller seed will be planted with a little bit less depth. And with peppers, sometimes I'll put more than one seed into each little pod here, because peppers are a little bit finicky, and sometimes they don't germinate quite as well, but more importantly, they often kind of wither. So they don't get exactly the perfect water and the perfect situation that they want. They tend to kind of take a downturn. So peppers only go about 1/4 of an inch underneath the soil, so they're small little seeds. Right, so your squash, zucchini, pumpkin seeds are going to be pretty big, and that means that they get planted a little bit more deeply than their smaller friends. So apologies for the awkwardness of trying to do this with one hand. All right, so we're going to kind of poke these down a little bit deeper than we did with the other ones. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be exact. Plants are fairly forgiving, and all of the squash family are pretty, they like to live, they want to grow. And so you can be pretty successful with these guys. And then once they turn into plants, they really are quite prolific, so you may not need as many as you think you need to feed your family off of zucchini and squash. So those are yellow crookneck squash, and then we'll also do a zucchini. The biggest seeds that we plant today, and they go in the deepest, following along with that general maxim. So get them into their little homes. So we're gonna plant a whole bunch of different kinds of lettuce, and these are lettuce seeds, they're pretty small. So lettuce seeds go about 1/8 of an inch into the ground, and so it's all very delicate. And with lettuce, I do typically put a couple of seeds into each of the little pots here because they don't really mind being transplanted, and if I end up with extra lettuce, that is not a problem. And once you've got all your seeds planted, you're gonna give it a good spritz with water. You want to make sure that the seedlings stay evenly moist, but that they're not like drowning in water. So that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm going to put a little plastic cover over it, and that's going to help to keep the heat in, as well as helping to keep it more evenly moist in there. So that's pretty much what it looks like. If you don't have one of these seedling trays, you can literally just take the plastic covering off of like a fruit container or the top of a rotisserie chicken and use that over the top. You could use saran wrap. There's lots of different options if you don't have this exact thing. All right, so that's pretty much all there is to it. We'll check back in a couple of days and see if there's any growth to report. But basically what you're going to do is just keep misting them, each day or whenever the soil on the top is dry, and hopefully in a few days to a week you'll start to see some seedlings.